Welcome to Tate Britain.
Well, here we are in the famous Tate Gallery.
In this series, we've been given unique access to some of the nation's most loved paintings.
I do love it.
I think you've got great taste.
Do I?
Mainly because I share it.
I'm Gus Casely-Hayford, art curator and cultural historian.
Isn't this just magnificent?
And I'd like to invite you into scenes of some of the most extraordinary paintings and remarkable landscapes.
Oh my God, it's the same.
All in the company of some very talented men and women.
Part of me does go like, I could have done that.
We'll walk in the shadows of these great artists.
Put your hands behind your back, it gives you more authority.
Rediscovering their secrets and inspirations.
I'm changing my mind about this painting now.
So sit back, enjoy the view, or better still, follow in my footsteps.
I've got my walking boots and I'm looking forward to it very much.
Hand in hand, like Morecambe and Wise.
We begin this journey not at Tate Britain, but here in what I think is our greatest theatre of public art, Trafalgar Square, to celebrate one of our greatest but most underrated artists, Sir Edwin Landseer.
There are undeniably better painters, more revolutionary and celebrated artists. But there are few whose work has captured a sense of who we are, the British, as much as Edwin Landseer. His work is, in the truest sense of the word, iconic. But it's also like the man himself, troubling, full of questions about identity, violence and power. And unbelievably, as grand and as operatic as his work was, his life was even more so. And joining me is someone who's been enthralled by the Victorian period and its artists all his life, Jeremy Paxman. And we're meeting at the Tate Stores at a mystery address somewhere in the depths of South London for a very special treat.
So welcome.
Oh, they're on the walls.
Yes.
I thought they were going to be in racks.
It's just so wonderful that they've brought out some of my favourite pieces of art by Landseer.
That's the Duke of Wellington at revisiting Waterloo, which he never did.
And that's
Do you know there were tourists on the battlefield at Waterloo the day after the battle finished? It's amazing, isn't it? But the horse is very well done. I
It's
think.
gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, just the way in which he captures animals, it's just exquisite.
Is it true that when he was young, he could sketch
With both
hands different subjects? He could be doing one with his right hand and one with his left hand. That's amazing.
Yes. But also that he could draw the same subject with two hands and the single image would join up and would be perfectly in perspective.
Wow. He's one of those artists who's just gone really out of fashion. Really, really out of fashion. It's when they did things like putting the Monarch of the Glen on shortbread tins.
Yes.
You thought, oh, look at this sentimental tosh. And he goes off and let's find some picturesque poverty somewhere.
No, but this spoke to
Very
a new
romantic.
audience.
Yes.
And it told them about things that would otherwise have been kind of, they wouldn't have known about.
There's no denying it. Landseer was more than a little guilty of pandering to the Victorian taste for the mawkish. But I think his greatness has been overlooked as a result. His animal paintings enthralled a nation who wished to see themselves as noble, faithful, and fierce. But look into the corners and the shadows of the paintings, and you'll see how he could also paint them as vulnerable, timid, and weak. He was a complicated man, and that's what I want to explore with Jeremy. The private, the hidden Landseer.
And I think these are two works which give a sense of the other side of him, the personal side of him. He doesn't actually get to Scotland until his 20s, but absolutely falls in love with it. And I think it's a place that is a way into his two great relationships, one with Queen Victoria and the other with the Duchess of Bedford.
It's very majestic. I love it.
I love it, I love it. And again, it's about reflecting majesty, isn't it? It's about scale. It's a beautiful thing. These works he painted for himself. They tell you something of who he was as an individual. He was someone who grew up with not very much money, and so he had to make those kinds of compromises and paint that sort of painting.
I like Landseer.
You like Landseer.
But I do recognise he's a very acquired taste. He's not a fashionable artist in any sense at all.
He deserves a second
I think he deserves a second look because he was an amazing painter.
But before we head into these deeply personal and private Highland landscapes, I'm going to head to central London to discover how Landseer's youth was full of close encounters with the animal kingdom that inspired his art and made his fortune. Starting on the Strand, I'm going to head north past Sir John Soane's Museum, home to the lesser-known Victorian animal painter, James Ward. Then heading west, past the Cartoon Museum, where you can find examples of Landseer's London, as found in the pages of magazines like Punch, before I reach Fitzrovia, where Landseer was born in 1802. From Fitzrovia, it's a short stroll into Regent's Park, where I'll rendezvous with Jeremy before we head on to the lion enclosure of London Zoo.
The London that Edwin grew up in was busy as well. I mean, in those days, there were between 40 and 50,000 horse-drawn carriages in these streets. But if you wanted more exotic animals, you could also get those. There were more than 100 menageries where you could buy a lion, you could buy a tiger, you could buy a bear. And one of the most famous was here at the Exeter Exchange. It was an exciting time in which anything felt possible. Every day in the docks, ships would come from all parts of the world laden with exotic animals. And for Edwin, this was a place that absolutely fueled his young imagination.
Heading north, past the Sir John Soane and Cartoon Museums, my next stop is Foley Street, where Edwin was born.
It was on these streets in Fitzrovia that the young Landseer grew up and learned what it was to be an artist. He had as neighbours people like Fuseli, people like Turner, and of course Haydon. Haydon became a sort of mentor to him, who encouraged him on his first steps on being an artist. But the main mentor was his father, his dear old father, who was an engraver, a militant man who fought on behalf of the engravers to have their art accepted by the Royal Academy. And what an environment to grow up for young Edwin. He realised the value of the arts, and he realised it was something that was worth fighting for.
Not far from Foley Street is Regent's Park, designed by John Nash, the architect behind Buckingham Palace. It was a place that fired Landseer's imagination. Jeremy and I are heading to London Zoo, where Landseer made his preparatory studies for what would become his one great foray into sculpture, the lions of Trafalgar Square.
Just a few blocks north of where Edwin grew up, London opened up into open parkland. And this was what his father called Edwin's open studio, because up here he could come and he'd not just see dogs, but also pigs and cows, but also from the 1820s, something new, a zoo.
Your Gus, I claim my $5,000. Where are we going now?
Oh, the zoo.
Oh, well, why not? It's a nice afternoon for it.
Do you have childhood memories of the zoo, Jeremy?
Well, I was brought here as a child once, and I brought my own children here, but I haven't been for ages. I read a guide to London Zoo.
Yes.
It was about 1860 something, 1870 something.
Right.
And it describes how you can come here and you can be like an explorer in Africa,
Yes.
and you'll see all these creatures, and you'll never leave London. And that's it. I mean, that was what it was about, wasn't it?
Exactly. And this idea that you could be only kind of a few miles from a rhinoceros anywhere in London, because you could go into a shop, into a menagerie on the Strand, and you could come out with a rhinoceros or a leopard or a lion and walk away. It's hard to imagine that in that period that anyone could own a lion, and there are stories of children in the East End being eaten by escaped tigers and things like that. In that period when he was working on that commission for Trafalgar Square, he was in touch with the zoo, because not only was he wanting to draw them, but he was aware that one of the biggest male lions was on its last legs. And then when it dies, it's delivered to his house, and before it putrefies, he's drawing lots and lots of versions of it. He's removing the skin to look at how the muscles work. And
Oh, there's a lion, look.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Fantastic, regal-looking thing, isn't he?
Yes. Glorious.
Wow.
You must think about the reasons why a lion would have been chosen as the symbol for...
Well, of course, it's obvious.
yes.
Because it was an imperial beast,
Yes.
and it looked ferocious, or was supposed to look ferocious.
Yes. You look at those 4 lions in Trafalgar Square.
They're just sitting there.
Oh, God.
With tourists clambering all over them. Look at the poor old thing yawning there now.
You're just
He's getting bored with your observations.
You're just being deliberately difficult. I mean, you must...
I'm not being difficult. I think he's a wonderful creature.
Yes.
And I agree that Landseer's representation of the lion is terrific.
Yes.
But I just don't go with you to the next stage, which is that he was somehow, through that, expressing some imperial destiny.
Gorgeous. These magnificent animals, they have come to represent who we are as a nation, who we could be. And it's about a kind of pride, but also laced within that, like the artist himself, a magnificent man who was well aware of his vulnerabilities. There is simultaneously a kind of sadness in these beasts, a kind of recognition that with empire, there's also the huge weight of responsibility. This was about winning hearts and minds. This was art that would help to build a nation. And the only artist that could do that in a way that spoke not to the elites in galleries, but to all of us out here was Edwin Landseer.
The People's curmudgeon, Jeremy Paxman, is joining me on a walk into the complex and turbulent world of Victorian England, as seen through the eyes of one of its most famous, richest and maddest artists, Sir Edwin Landseer. Landseer is an artist forever associated with animals. Animals were his muse, the subject he could imbue with humanity in a way he couldn't with his two-legged sitters. But before I head to Scotland with Jeremy, I'm going to visit Tim Flash, who, like Landseer almost 200 years ago, is the nation's preeminent animal portrait artist. His photos of animals in the wild and in the studio are the work of someone with a clear vision of the animal kingdom and our relationship to it.
Edwin Landseer was very interested in this kind of noble animal. I to some degree, will also photograph Grace in a way that looks across and up, so quite heroic, almost like a human portrait.
The first painting Landseer ever sold was of two fighting dogs. He was 16, and it was to set a precedent for the rest of his career. Throughout his life, he sold thousands of prints of aristocratic pooches. It was these, along with the Victorian-led movement of revering dogs, that made him the most popular artist of his day. And it provided him with a vast fortune to boot.
She's got now into the pose that the Landseer...
Yes, that's right. It's actually whether that works.
Tim's sitter today is Grace. She's a Landseer thoroughbred. That's right. Landseer's work was so popular in the 19th century that he had a breed of dog named after him. That's some legacy.
One can already see that sense of personality.
Well, you can see the sense of the scale of, of the dog.
It's easy to belittle Landseer's talent with modern eyes, and titles like judgment and dignity and impudence hardly help matters. But what he does so well, unlike any other artist before, is invest a sense of character upon the subjects. This dog is noble. This one is cheeky. And here's one with ideas above its station. They are remarkable when seen in the right context, and Tim's work is equally so.
I think what I would point to what I think is the most significant is we are entering into a period where we actually have to focus more on the animal world.
Yes.
And its importance to humans. So there his legacy lies particularly in that he was someone who explored that.
Yes.
And now, in a sense, we have to explore it because we have no choice going forward.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where his legacy is particularly important.
One should always be wary of conjecture, but I think that Edwin may have felt more of an affinity to the dogs in his paintings than to their human masters. The one exception to this, though, may have been the most powerful woman in the world. My next destination is over 500 miles away. I'm going to join Jeremy on the banks of the River Dee in the royal playroom that is Balmoral. Throughout his life, Landseer's talents had given him access to society's elite. It was inevitable that he would fall into the orbit of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Albert loved Scotland, no doubt drawn by the landscape similarities between the Highlands and his Bavarian home. And wherever Albert went, his besotted bride Victoria was sure to follow. And wherever the crown went, the rest of the court, including Landseer, would follow too. And really, when you get here and see it for yourself, who can blame them?
I know you're a lover of Scotland and fishing.
I am.
And what first drew you up here?
Well, I just find the sheer beauty of it is the thing, really. What really drew me was the chance to go and try and catch a salmon. If that's what you... I'm not going to waste my time explaining it to you, in fact, but...
Why? Why
Well,
not?
because I've given up trying to explain to people why it is a sensible occupation for a grown man to spend his energy trying to deceive something with a brain the size of a pea. I mean, I agree, that's pretty silly. While you're doing it, the world turns around you. Trees, the birds, see otters and things. It's wonderful.
Our next walk is a royal affair, a short but beautiful stroll through the grounds of Balmoral Castle, home to one of the castle's most famous and intriguing residents, John Brown, who Landseer painted years later. Starting outside Landseer's sleeping quarters above the household stables, we're going to make our way past the rich angling waters of the River Dee, which the Queen herself was inspired to paint in several watercolours. From there, we make our way past the castle's ballroom and through the gardens, where the Queen would walk with her entourage of dogs, finally ending at the statue of Queen Victoria's beloved collie, Noble.
Landseer, he would come up here and he would stay here in the stable block. And I think he was one of a
Tradesman's quarters.
tradesmen. And even though he was obviously adored by Queen Victoria, nevertheless, when it really counted, he was constantly reminded that, you know, he wasn't...
Them and us.
Yes.
Yeah. But I love the way in the 19th century the royal family and the rest of the toffery took up this occupation of being pretend Scots. Don't you find that funny? Landseer did it too, though, didn't he?
Oh, he adored it, yes, yes. Oh, he's a London boy, and he connects with this landscape, with the people here. In part, isn't that what lures you here? That kind of
No,
sense
it's
of
just
Scottish...
beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Walking through the grounds of Balmoral, it's impossible to resist being as smitten as Victoria herself was. Even her watercolour views of the famous tower are dreamy-eyed. If you want to get a sense of how inescapable Landseer's legacy is, think of Scotland. As we know, all the sentimental crofters, dogs, tartan and shortbed is a completely confected idea. Albert and Victoria conceived it. Sir Walter Scott put words to it, but it was Landseer, the people's artist, who put it all together into a coherent and completely seductive image. It was a complete fantasy, but Landseer's talents were so convincing, 150 years later, it is now a reality for millions around the world.
Do you not think someone like Landseer, that he had limitations? It wasn't possible for him to always be creating work that was hard-hitting. Sometimes he had
Fair enough.
He had to do the sort of thing...
We all have limitations, yes. Yes, of course he did. Of course he did.
Because I see him as a great artist who deserves reappraisal.
He had a real talent, I agree.
Yes,
I
yes,
agree, I
yes,
agree.
Yes.
More than a draftsman? I don't know. But I often wonder how much is going on behind the picture, how much he's investing it with his own feelings. Is this a grave?
Yeah, it's buried here.
Noble by name, by nature noble too, faithful companion,
Sympathetic truth.
sympathetic true. It doesn't even make sense. Well, probably written by Queen Victoria. You can imagine her saying that in a German accent, can't you?
But what's your view of Victoria?
I think she's rather impressive.
One of the interesting things I think that she does is to collect people. So Abdul Karim, John Brown.
I knew you were going to say Abdul Karim and John Brown.
But also our very own Edwin Landseer.
Why is that interesting?
Well, it is interesting because...
Why?
Well, what she writes about Edwin Landseer, he's very handsome. There's obviously something which is...
Queen Victoria knew where the monkey slept. There's no question about that. She was a proper functioning human being. She and Albert enjoyed a very active sex life. She had loads of children. If you go to Osborne, you can see they had this double lock on the door so that they could lock themselves in. And, you know, she was a proper passionate woman. It's absolutely untrue to say that she was a terrible old fuddy-duddy. She might have become that in the latter stages of her life after she was widowed, but no, she was a proper functioning human being.
Jeremy Paxman and I are roaming through England and Scotland in the footsteps of Queen Victoria's favourite artist, Edwin Landseer. A household name, he was a giant in the Victorian art world. But in private, he was beholden to two women who influenced and inspired his life every bit as much as the animal kingdom did his art. The first was Queen Victoria, whose patronage enslaved as much as empowered him. The second was the Duchess of Bedford, the woman who held his heart from the moment they met to the day he died. She was magnetic, intelligent, and beautiful. And even though she was married to one of the most powerful men in the country, was mother to 10 children and 20 years his senior, he was completely besotted. If you want to see how love looks in the hands of a master, I implore you to look at Landseer's sketches of Georgina. He can't disguise his love. And it was in Scotland, away from the intrigue of polite society, that their relationship blossomed.
This is the place that Edwin is at his most happy. And just in terms of the landscape, you can see why you would fall in love with it.
Absolutely beautiful, I agree.
My next walk is a romantic trail in the company of Jeremy. We're heading to a very special place, a love nest, purpose-built for the Duchess and her young beau. The setting is the stunning Glen, home to the deer that found their way into Landseer's paintings. Across the River Feshy, where Landseer sketched the Duchess numerous times, dressed in tartan, her face shrouded by her bonnet. After that, we make our way through the indigenous and ancient woods before we reach the setting of our painting, bringing home the stag and the purpose-built bothies where the Duchess and Landseer were so happy.
The Duke has been unwell and he comes up here for a bit of rest and recuperation, and his wife realises that this is an opportunity for her to pursue her love of art. And so she invites this young artist, Edwin Landseer, up to join them.
How old is he and how old is she?
He's about 18 and she's pushing 40, but
So Mrs. Robinson's situation, isn't it?
Very quickly, he and the Duchess, they begin to get very close.
Did the Duke ever see it?
They meet at the time when he's just had a stroke, and he is...
Oh, this is awful.
How is it awful?
The Duke's had a stroke.
The Duke's... Well, the Duke...
The Duke's had a stroke and his wife is knocking off the young painter.
No, but the Duke has his own dalliances at different times, and he accepts that his wife, as long as she is discreet, that she can have her own friends. And they build in this landscape a number of what would have been huts, and it becomes a kind of artistic community. And Edwin comes out here and he captures it in a series of gorgeous drawings and paintings, and he is idyllically happy. There is a strange pattern in Landseer's life where happiness seems to be pretty abruptly interrupted by catastrophe. And for him, it's his mentor, this person who seems to haunt him throughout his life, which is Benjamin Haydon.
Benjamin Haydon was Landseer's tutor, who possessed a particular gift for annoying those around him. He was a less than average artist who was cursed with a huge ego and a grand ambition, a combination which often resulted in him being either in debt or in prison.
Haydon falls into debt, so he starts to write letters to his old students saying, "Could you please help me out, please help me out." And Edwin's thinking, the old man...
Does he help him out?
Well, he's thinking the old man, he's always nagging at me, he's always getting at me. Why on earth should I be the person to bail him out? He needs to stand on his own 2 feet.
Oh, for heaven's sake, what a... So he didn't give him any money?
He didn't give him any money. And
well, why? I'm going off this man.
No, but Edwin is having a fantastic time. He's thinking, this is
he's
my
having a great time,
opportunity now. This is my opportunity to embrace a new moment in my career. And then the news comes from London that Haydon got incredibly desperate. He's bought a very low caliber gun, put it to his temple and pulled the trigger. But the caliber of the bullet is so low that it pierces his temple, crushes his cranium, but doesn't kill him. He's still alive, but he's determined to kill himself. So he pulls a knife from a dresser in his kitchen and cuts his throat. But he leaves behind a note blaming someone who's let him down, someone who he feels that he could have relied on in his most desperate moment, but wasn't there. Someone whose name begins with the letter L. For the rest of his life, you get the sense that whispering in his ear is that voice of Haydon saying, "You sold out. You've let me down. You're not the man that I thought you were."
Well, it's a sad story, I agree, but I don't think Landseer comes out of it very well.
Yes. He doesn't, but for a young chap who came from almost nothing.
Yeah, on the make, giving the minor aristocrats what they wanted, traducing his talent to satisfy cheap taste. I mean, I can't see what's to admire in all of this. And is he at this point still with the Duchess of Bedford?
He's still with her, but even that, as a relationship, you know, that is about to shift and change as well.
Well, I'm going off him.
Our final destination, the remains of the lovers' purpose-built bothies.
This is the site of the place where they were most happy.
So what is that? What's that structure?
That structure is the chimney breast in the painting, The Bringing Home of the Deer. On the inside of this, he would paint on this chimney breast, painted into the plaster, were scenes of deer that he left behind.
If you were going to read something into some of these Highland pictures of his, what would you read into them?
Well, I think this was a man who made appalling compromises and painted paintings which were very commercial. But in his Highland paintings, he was being more honest than he was in any other area of his creativity.
So these paintings are not just about glorious scenery like this, they're about an emotional and falling in love, really.
Yes.
In love with a person and a place.
Yes.
How wonderful.
There's no denying that Scotland had a profound effect on Landseer's work. And I think it was more than just his freedom to love the Duchess beyond the confines of the palace door that inspired him. I think it's what the country represented. Its people, places and wildlife provided a rich canvas of symbolism which crystallised itself in his most famous work.
And when you think about Edwin Landseer, this is probably the image that comes to mind, the monarch of the Glen. A huge stag crests a hill and looks back into the morning light. It's absolutely magnificent. And yet it has its detractors. I mean, many people, many Scottish people, feel that this image, created by an Englishman, created for the House of Lords, is a symbol of Victorian power that represents a kind of repression of Scotland and its culture. But I think it's an important image, an image that needs a second look. This, in part, is an image about the painter himself. This isn't about a kind of imperialism. This isn't about power alone. This is also about the kind of vulnerability that exists when you are a stag standing on a hillside, that you become a target. And that was something that Landseer knew all about. He was the big stag on the mountainside, the artist that all of his contemporaries wanted to knock down, the man that for the younger generation represented the artistic establishment. He knew what it was like to look back into the light, to be powerful, but how that power could make him vulnerable.
In public, Landseer, entering his 6th decade, was the lion of the Victorian art world. But in private, his life was unstuck. The Duchess had died 10 years earlier, and he'd been struggling with depression for even longer than that. And now he was drinking heavily, but he never stopped painting. And in Holloway University, surrounded by all forms of Victorian sentimentality, lies one of his final, darkest, and greatest works.
What is this room?
So this is the picture gallery, and this is where these paintings have been since 1886, when Queen Victoria opened the college.
And they're all collected by
Thomas Holloway. In 2 years, he spent £84,000, which is a huge figure, and he broke the records with 2 of his pictures for the highest sum ever paid at auction for a contemporary piece. So that's The Marriage Market and Man Proposes, God Disposes, which is currently hidden by a flag.
Why is the flag on it?
Because in the college, the students believe that that painting is haunted. They think that if you look at it, you'll fail your exams. So the only thing big enough that the registrar could find to cover it up was a Union Jack flag.
Are you willing to take it down?
Yes. It's an amazing picture underneath.
It's more amazing than the Union Jack.
So I will reveal.
It's decidedly on the cheap side. That is an extraordinary picture.
It's very special, isn't it?
Can you just explain to us what it's showing? It's obviously 2 polar bears. But...
So what it shows is the imagined end of the failed 1845 expedition to find the Northwest Passage. So Sir John Franklin set off, was very confident that he would find that passage, but he was never seen from again. But I always talk about it in terms of the Romans and Vesuvius, and Britain really felt that it was the most technologically advanced, that it had the best navy, that surely they were the ones, and this was the expedition. And then nature literally bit back, like the Romans with Vesuvius. They thought they were so civilized, and yet Vesuvius overtook them.
Neither Vesuvius nor this are about Roman or British failure. They are about the failure of humanity. This is, this is about man going somewhere he shouldn't be.
I'm curious to know, knowing that this is your favourite of the Landseers, how does it feel to see it in real life?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I
pictures.
really like it. I really, really like it. It's macabre, it's powerful, it's depressing. It's everything I like about a painting. I can't stand these sickeningly sweet things everywhere.
But in his personal life at this point, I think he is going through a crisis. And so I think that's one of the reasons why this is such an unusual subject within his career.
I mean, by the point that he's painting this, he's obviously on the beginnings of the unravelling of his mind, isn't he? That he's unwell.
And I think that the colours that comes out in that, it's a very different palette, the darkness, the gothicness. But I think even if you're mentally unwell, if you're an artist and you just have that urge to keep creating, keep drawing, that doesn't change. So you're still going to be a good artist. And for him, it must have been like breathing to just keep drawing. I think an artist who would suddenly stop painting actually would probably suffer more.
Yes.
And this is a way of maybe working through the problems that he had and what he was feeling.
My final walk In the spirit of Landseer's Twilight is a solitary affair. I'm heading back to Scotland, to the location of a small painting done just for himself. A private sketch which says so much about his interior life and his need for nature. Loch Arn and the Cairngorm Mountains. The site of this painting is one of the most remote spots in the UK. And full disclosure, it's not a walk for the faint-hearted. To get here, you have to traverse the 4,000-foot Cairngorm Mountain, after which it's a long descent into Landseer's View. But just by looking at the painting, you know it's going to be worth it.
Oh my God. It's just unreal. Surreally beautiful. In his day, you would have had to trek 9 hours along the floor of this loch. And he came up here for this, to capture this view. And to do it for himself, it's a kind of therapeutic exercise. Not just the painting, but to capture somehow the majesty of nature. Utterly, utterly glorious.
We all know happiness is fleeting. Nevertheless, it's a part of us that needs to be fed. In 1839, when he was still in his 30s, Landseer asked the recently widowed Duchess, the love of his life, for a hand in marriage. She turned him down. I don't think he ever recovered. For the last half of his life, for over 3 decades, he simply gave up on happiness. And the consequences of that choice were devastating.
Landseer's final years were a descent into laudanum, alcohol, and finally, insanity. But even in his worst moments, there were periods of lucidity in which he escaped again into painting, into landscape. You come out here and you understand how landscape was a place in which he could find refuge. Spaces like these, they were places where he could feel safe.